So microcenter is getting big into gaming handhelds. Obviously, we have a wide selection of different handheld PCs that you can use for gaming on the go. I have a new one here today. This is the Zotac Zone. I'm really excited to check this out. I actually have not opened this up just yet. So why don't we open up the box? Why don't we take a look and then we'll get this fired up. So looks like this comes open just like this. Packaging's pretty cool. Nice, there it is. And I'm actually really excited about this device because everything I've read about it, the specs that it has, I mean, this is supposed to be pretty awesome. And there she is. Cool, and there we go. I mean, first impressions, this is really lightweight. Like, this is actually a lot lighter than I was expecting it to be. I'm a big Steam Deck user, like I've said in the past, but this feels really nice in the hands. Now, I know right off the bat, Hall effect joysticks, right? Hall effect triggers as well. And the biggest deal, trackpads. That's huge. So similar to the Steam Deck where it has the left and the right trackpad, this makes navigation so much easier. Especially since this is a Windows 11 device. That means it'll function just like any Windows 11 PC would. So you'll have a cursor that you move around, and since you don't have a mouse, these trackpads actually help out a lot. This is pretty awesome. Now, just looking at the body, there's a lot here that's very similar to other handhelds on the market, but the biggest difference are those trackpads that I was mentioning before. And that's a really big deal, so I'm really happy that these are there. But you also have these radial dials around the Hall effect joysticks. So I believe these are programmable and you can use them maybe for changing your sensitivity or changing other settings. I'm definitely gonna wanna try those out, but radial dials around there. You have a unified D-pad. I don't know if you can hear that. Let me bring that up to the mic. That's very clicky. Those are really clicky. I'm actually used to D-pads that feel kind of stiff. This is really interesting. I'm kind of into it. I was a little hesitant about the unified D-pad design here. I play a lot of, platformer games, like Crash Bandicoot or other games like that. I still play those. And I like using the D-pad on my Steam Deck more than using the joystick. I just find it easier. I mean, also, I grew up on a PlayStation, so I like playing on the D-pad like that, like I did 30 years ago. But the clickiness on this D-pad, this is incredible. So there's a Zotac button on the bottom left. I believe this is to open their launcher. On the top left, there's a view button. Top right, you have an option button. And then down here is your more button, but there's also a home button as well. And one of the biggest differences you'll also see, at least on the front side here, compared to other handhelds, right over here, I'm gonna take the sticker off too. This is kind of funny if you ask me. It is a front-facing camera. There's a camera built into this. You can use this for Teams calls, Zoom calls, you can use it on Discord. I mean, basically anything that'll take a video feed, you can use that. We'll take a look at that closer. And there is a microphone built in right here on the left as well. And then the biggest thing to take notice of is this beautiful 7-inch screen. Now, this is a 7-inch AMOLED full HD, so 1920 by 1080, 120 hertz. That is impressive. That's a really impressive screen. We know that OLED is hitting some of these other handhelds as well, so at least the first iteration for Zotac, right off the bat, having an AMOLED, that's awesome. And that stands for Active Matrix Organic Light Emitting Diode. So that's a type of OLED that I think is gonna look gorgeous. I'm actually really looking forward to firing this up in just a minute. Now, looking at the top, you have your bumpers, you have your triggers, but one important distinction are these buttons here on the back. These buttons here on the back actually allow you to change between there's an actual physical difference too. That's incredible. So with this setting right here, and you can see on the symbol, there's a long symbol and then there's a short circle symbol. So when you have it on the long symbol, that is a full press that you're doing on the triggers to get your registered kind of click there. And you have to do that all the way, that old analog style. But if you change it to the little circle setting, that's a hair trigger. And you can see the travel on those triggers is very little. It's actually, that's kind of cool. I'm into that. I actually like it. It feels a little bit tighter because the travel is a lot less than, here, I'll do one long, one short. Yeah, I kind of like the hair trigger. That is really cool. And then on the back, you have your 2 macro buttons here. And then the other cool thing is the built-in kickstand, which the built-in kickstand just pops up just like that. Device stands up. A lot of people like using these with an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller on Bluetooth. You see a lot of people traveling, they'll put this right in front of them on the tray that comes down on an airplane, and they'll play. It's a little bit more comfortable, right? Because your controller is a little bit more lightweight than the actual device. But there's one other thing that I noticed here that is a really cool feature that I've been doing with my Steam Deck, and I think it's really cool that they have it here on the Zotax Zone. If you look on the side here, there's a little slot, and that's for a lanyard. That's actually really, really awesome. So on my Steam Deck, I actually got a case that I put on the Steam Deck, and around the vent on the back, I actually bought some lanyards that I put onto it, and I'm able to put the lanyard around my wrist when I'm playing, because it's kind of nice if you kind of get up and go, you don't drop it. It's a little snug there on your wrist, so like it's extra support. But the cool thing is I found, because the lanyard is so short, when I'm playing in bed or something, and when I pull my wrist out naturally like this, it creates a little bit of tension with the lanyard, and it actually creates a support that makes it easier for me to play like in bed for long periods of time. Like I've definitely played Fallout New Vegas in bed for a while on my Steam Deck, and that actually helps support it. So the fact that there's a built-in lanyard support on this is actually really, really cool. And for being a gamer on the go, I mean, this is really kind of like a pick up and stop sort of device, right? Especially if you're traveling around, going on the bus or the subway, you don't want someone to snag it away from you. So having a lanyard around your wrist is actually really cool. And the other thing to notice is there's an RGB strip built in on the back. That's their Spectra RGB strip that they have there. Here on the bottom, you can see that you have the micro SD card slot. Now, this is a UHS 2 micro SD card slot, so you can use some of those faster cards if you want. And that's really good for extra storage. I'm gonna get into some of the specs under the hood in just a minute, but we're just kind of looking at the body right now. But on the bottom, you have your USB 4 and another USB 4 on top. So that's actually pretty handy if you're using this. There's gonna be a dock that's gonna be compatible with this. So if you put it in the dock on the bottom, you still have a port on the top for something else. And yeah, dual USB 4, I mean, that's gonna be lightning fast. So on the top, you can see you have your 3.5mm headphone jack, you have your volume controls. This is an indicator for the battery charge level. And that's actually something that's also really cool to have, because at a glance, you can just see what the battery level is without having to turn the device on and check. And then you have your power button over here. The power button has a built-in fingerprint reader for Windows Hello. So that means you can just use this to register your fingerprint, and you can just turn on your device just like that. That's actually really cool. So all in all, at least just looking at the body, I really like the color. It's kind of like a gunmetal gray. It's really lightweight. It's more lightweight than what I was expecting. And the screen is nice. You know, the bezels are a little bit large there. The screen has a glossy finish on the glass here. And you can already see it's picking up a couple of my fingerprints, so I'll just wipe those off. Now, if you're used to an etched glass or a textured glass, this is gonna be just a little bit glossier than those textured glasses, but when I get it in the right spot, it looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna turn this on in just a minute, but let's talk about the internals. So this guy has an AMD Ryzen 7 8840U processor, and that's a pretty good processor for a mobile handheld device like this. So that's 8 cores, 16 threads. It can boost to 5.1 gigahertz, which is kind of crazy to have in a handheld like this. Now it also has an AMD Radeon 780M GPU. So Zen 4 CPU, RDNA 3 GPU, I mean, that's going to be pretty powerful, as well as 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5x-7500 memory. So all in all, this device is going to be pretty awesome. Now, this one has 512 gigabytes of storage with an SSD that's built in. I'm actually not sure what the storage size is in terms of, is it a 2280, 2242, is it a 2230 like we've seen in some other devices? But one thing I have noticed is that there are covers for the screw holes here, and I might just pry off the back and try to take a look at the internals, but we'll save that for a little bit later. For now, let's just play around. Now, CPU, GPU, all in all, specs are looking pretty good. Now you also have Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2. That's actually really nice because my Steam Deck only has Wi-Fi 5, I believe. That's one thing that I've noticed is the Wi-Fi speeds on some other devices aren't up to par with what you would want to download all of these games. It's actually kind of a pain to download the games. The bottleneck might be the Wi-Fi. The second bottleneck would actually be the SD card slot, depending on the SD card that you're using, because the write speed on that can be a little bit slow. But having Wi-Fi 6E on here is actually going to be really, really nice. So I'm going to fire this up, see if there's some battery life there. There we go. And the fan is whirring just a little bit, so I'm going to let that run. Now, one other thing to call out, air intake is here on the back, and it exhausts on the top, which is pretty common with a lot of these handhelds, and it makes the most sense since hot air rises. You want it to go that way anyway. There's a single fan inside, and there's a triple heat pipe design with 3 copper heat pipes inside of there, and they go through this heat sink right here with about 60 aluminum fins. So that should help keep it cool. And in terms of noise, because it's starting up right now, I mean, you have to put your ear up there. Oh, it actually just stopped because it's still booting up. It was on, I guess, full blast, and it was making a little bit of noise, but now it's just dead quiet. I gotta do it. I gotta smell the vent. It smells good. All right, there we go, we have Windows. All right, so while I set up Windows, so in terms of cooling, I think you're looking pretty solid with this guy. I've really never had an instance with overheating on any of the handhelds that I've used, but I think this processor and this cooling system combined, it's gonna work really, really well. Now I'm gonna hook this up to our studio Wi-Fi. Don't look at the password. All right, so while Windows is getting set up, let's take a look at anything else that's, while Windows is getting set up, I just want to take a look in the box 1 second to see what else is in there. You have your quick start guide, notice for early adopters. So that's another thing to notice. There is the Zotac button on the bottom left, which should load up the launcher. Now, there was a notice that says that the launcher will arrive at a later date. This has been out for a little bit as of the time of shooting this video, so the launcher may be available. I'm going to double check, but do keep an eye out for when that launcher does release. And so we have some information here. And then another little box here. I'm gonna open this right up. Cool. And that looks like our charger. One really quick thing. So here is 65-watt power delivery with the power brick that comes with this. I actually like that this is just the adapter with the USB-C here, and the cable is detachable. I actually like that a lot because what I found is some of these chargers, they get really frayed when the cable is attached at the end here, and you're gonna burn through that charging brick, especially if you're wrapping it up a lot and traveling with it. So that's actually really, really nice. You could swap this out with any other high power delivery USB-C cable that you could buy, and we have them at microcenter, but it'll come with the cable as well. And it also comes with all of your adapters for all of your local electric plugs. So depending on what area of the world you live in, you'll be covered there. And we also have our cable here. There we go, cool. This looks nice and long. I'm imagining this is 6 feet, which is the right length. Let's see. Closer to 4. My arm span is about 6 feet, so closer to 4 feet. This is a real technical measurement. But at least having it detachable from the power brick, that's actually a really nice feature. So I'm gonna put this aside for now, but that about covers it for what's inside the box. And let me dive back into the battery. One thing that I didn't dive into when I was talking about the specs is the battery. And that's arguably one of the most important features for these handheld devices. Now this has a 48.5 watt-hour battery. With this CPU and GPU combination, I would expect the battery life to be pretty decent. Now, with a lot of these devices, on average, you're looking at about 1 to 2 hours of battery life, depending on what game you're playing, depending on how hard you're running with the graphics. There's a lot of other factors to take into account there. With that being said, I'm interested in seeing what the battery life is like on this, so let's try it out. So one thing to note, setting this up is just like setting up any other Windows device, so laptop, desktop, anything like that. This is interesting. Fingerprint reader is ready. Let's try it out. Let's see how easy it is for me to set up the fingerprint reader. So lift and touch again, lift and touch again. It looks like it's registering. I know with these fingerprint readers, you want to get like different areas of your finger. I actually like laptops that have the fingerprint reader to open it up. I find it's actually kind of awesome. My only complaint about fingerprint readers in general, I'm one of those people that cuts open my fingers all the time doing stuff. Like when I'm working on something, you know, I'm setting up a camera or something, I'm always slicing my fingers open. My thumb, I can never use for a fingerprint reader. So I always have to use my index finger. But that's just a personal thing. Now, this fingerprint reader is very thin. It's just a little sliver, so I'm trying to give it as many measurements as possible. But look at that. It says that I'm all set and my fingerprint reader is registered. Now I'm going to set up a super secret pin. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, trackpad is very clicky here. That's actually kind of nice. It feels good. I actually like that I can drag the cursor almost the full width of the screen from going fully left to right. I got about 50% there. I guess it also depends on my speed. With this being a Windows 11 device, you do get access to Game Pass. You can use Game Pass on Steam OS devices, but usually it's easier to do it through a browser, or if you sideload Windows, or if you do anything else, but it's usually an extra step that you have to do. At least you can do Game Pass here natively. So that's actually kind of nice. You also get access to Steam, GOG, Epic Games Launcher as well, and you don't have any issues with games that have the verification for anti-cheat, because there's that kernel level anti-cheat that doesn't work with Steam Deck or Steam OS devices, but it will work here. So for instance, Fortnite, Apex, Warzone, all of those anti-cheat enabled games that have that kind of kernel level detection, you can use that here. Now, something like this actually might be pretty decent for Fortnite since you have the macro buttons here. I would prefer an extra set of macro buttons, at least for Fortnite, because I like playing with the build mode on. Don't ask me why, I just think it's a lot of fun, but having those extra buttons I think would go a long way. That being said, at least for Call of Duty, Valorant, some of those other games, I mean, these single macro buttons will do just fine. And you also have these radial dials as well, so I'm curious to see what I can program that to. But there we go. That is a Windows home screen. And I gotta say, looks like the left trackpad isn't really doing anything at the moment. It's just the right trackpad that really operates as your cursor. But having this as a cursor, oh my goodness, this is so much nicer than having them do this like either on the screen or do it with the joystick. I know the Legion Go had their little detachable controller for the mouse, but now we're seeing that just built-in controllers are kind of standard for a lot of these handhelds. And I think what's really interesting about these handhelds is we're seeing this, and I'll call it the Precambrian explosion of handheld shapes and sizes and features, where everyone in an evolutionary sense is just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks and what works. So it's kind of nice to see each brand have its own take on a gaming handheld and bring a different feature set. You know, for instance, this front-facing camera, that's interesting. That's an interesting one. I'm actually looking forward to trying out a call on there. And, you know, kickstand seems to be the way to go for a lot of these. I think kickstand is just going to be standard. It just makes the most sense. It does add another mechanical component that could be a point of failure if you're not careful with these. And that's the thing about handhelds. You carry them everywhere you go, they could be accident prone. So you got to really take care of this thing. Now, there is a case available for this, and there is a dock as well. So those are a couple of options of what you can get. Oh, okay, so it seems like the launcher actually works. Oh, very cool. So we have our fan speed controls. These are just set to auto. I'm doing a bunch of updates here, but it looks like the launcher actually is on this device. So that's actually good news. So going forward, you should have a launcher on your device. Again, do check, do updates if you need to. Whatever you need should be available on their website at zotacgaming.com. So I'm just doing a bunch of updates here. So I want to get Steam installed. So that's another funny thing. Depending on what website you're going to, they'll treat it like a mobile device. So you'll only get the mobile websites for some things. So you have to force it to desktop mode for the browser stuff. So for instance, I went to Steam to get the Steam installer, steampower.com. It defaulted to the mobile website, but it had an easy button to change to the desktop website. That's just one of those quirks that you get with these portable PCs here. So I'm gonna get Steam installed, install 20 million other things, and then we'll try out a game or two. Take this for a test drive. So with Steam, it looks like you have the desktop version of Steam available. I'm going to transfer over a couple of games here on the network and get them installed. I'll just do a quick CyberPunk. One thing that I really like about Steam is that I can transfer my games over the network. So that's where that Wi-Fi 6E speed really kind of comes in handy because, you know, with a Wi-Fi 5, internet transfer is really going to be your bottleneck, even on a local network. So it's really nice to have. Now let's take a look. So it's transferring on our local network here, and this is over Wi-Fi. We do have a Wi-Fi 7 router, but Wi-Fi 6E speeds, let's take a look. Right now I'm getting 699 megabits per second, 739 megabits per second. That's actually pretty good. 775, 802 megabits per second. So this is actually kind of a nice test, in a vacuum at least, of network performance on a local network where we're just getting full bandwidth here. It's literally just going from our bench that has all of our games installed straight through, because that's just a wired connection, straight to the router, right over Wi-Fi. 910 megabits per second, 913. I think the peak we usually get when we do these Steam transfers is about 996. That's the highest I've ever seen. And that's because it's just on a 1 gigabit switch that we have going out to all the devices over there. We're gonna upgrade that to a 2.5 gigabyte switch, but for now, it's fast enough. I mean, the install time for a 60 gigabyte game here, or at least the transfer time, says 7 minutes. That's not bad. And that's a lot easier than downloading it again from the internet, which is gonna take a while. And also, if you do have a data cap with your ISP, that's gonna save you there. So this is actually kind of cool to see. That Wi-Fi 6E built in, that's actually gonna go a long way. Yeah, peak 925 megabits per second. That's pretty good for a transfer speed on a local network. So I'm actually very happy with that. I have 20 million things open here. There we go. So this is the Zotax Zone launcher, and this is just a fresh setup here. I just got this booted up, but you can see it has that kind of Steam OS look that we're all used to, that console look that we're all used to, and this is a layer that goes over Windows where you can just access your games directly and get that kind of closed system console experience that's just easier with these handhelds instead of fiddling with Windows, you know, loading up apps, going through everything. The library should automatically load all the games that you have installed, no matter the launcher that you're using. I have some games installing in the background right now, so I'm just waiting to see how that goes. It looks like you could minimize this and move it around like a normal window as well. And it has everything up here. It has your Wi-Fi connection, has your battery life, shows the time. And let's check on that install again. CyberPunk is actually going to be done in about 4 minutes. Not bad. So in the launcher, we have our fan settings, which are set to auto. You can set it manually. Looks like you can set a curve if you really want to. So having that level of granular control is actually pretty nice. Let's see. I'll just leave it set to auto. You have your performance tab in the launcher here. You can set your TDP limit, which is actually kind of nice if you really want to control your battery life. Throttling your TDP gives you a way of throttling the wattage that is getting sucked out by the CPU and GPU. There's energy performance preferences here. You can choose the boost mode for your CPU, which is preset to aggressive here. Additional VRAM size assigns 4 GB of memory or more for graphics. Interesting. So there's a setting like that in SteamOS as well, which allows you to take some of that RAM and assign it directly to the GPU. It pulls it all together and it utilizes that memory, but this allows you to dedicate more to the GPU. I know in SteamOS there's something similar to that you can set up, and I remember setting that up for Jedi Fallen Order, so I can get some better performance out of that. So that's actually kind of cool that they just have it right here, and it looks pretty easy to set up. Since I have everything set to default settings, let's go for performant. So this top left button up here brings up this quick settings menu, so you can see you have your volume, brightness, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Everything's just kind of set here. And then you have your TDP limits too, so that's just a quick menu that you can bring up. That's actually kind of nice to have. All right, let's try this out. Let's try CyberPunk. I got it installed. I mean, install process, start to finish, I don't know, 15, maybe 20 minutes. I mean, this will obviously be cut down quite a bit, but again, this is just kind of a first look. So I haven't charged this yet, so I'm actually gonna run this in now because the battery's running low.
Yesterday's body count battery running up to a solid and sturdy 30.
Speakers sound pretty good. Speakers are on the bottom, FYI. Speakers actually sound pretty good. Speakers are on the bottom, FYI. There's a left and a right here out of the bottom. I guess what's kind of nice is the way that this is shaped and the way you're holding it. You're not really covering those speakers. So for what they are, they sound pretty good. I am a headphone player. Like, I always play these with headphones, so that's just kind of my default there. But at least when I'm kind of being lazy and if I'm home alone so I'm not bothering anyone, I'll play it with the speakers on. So first I'm gonna go to graphics, let's see. Now I'm gonna try this with the Steam Deck preset. I think that's the way to go for these handhelds, and CyberPunk fortunately has a Steam Deck graphic preset, so that's gonna be pretty easy. Let's see. So 1920 by 1080. Let's try it. And I plugged this into the wall just to get the best performance, but also because the battery is a little bit low since I just got it out of the box. It needs a full battery charge anyway. All right, so indoors we're getting about 40 frames per second. Not bad. This is with the Steam Deck preset. So I think we might have to dial in some of those settings, 43, 38. So it's hanging around that 40 frames per second mark. But I have to say the image fidelity on this, I mean, this looks actually really nice, especially with the screen. This looks fantastic. Obviously it's hard to tell with the camera here, but this is a really nice screen. And especially at full 1080 as well. Now for games like this on a handheld, you might want to downsample, go to, let's say 720, and then use one of the upscalers to upscale, and that'll help you out, get a better frame rate, get some better performance there. Sure, you get a little bit of fidelity loss, but again, for a handheld here that's running CyberPunk 2077, that's the game you gotta play, right? I mean, this is a graphically intense game, and this game can really push it to the limit. I mean, right now with the Steam Deck preset, and this is full resolution, 44 frames per second, 44 44.64, and that's utilizing 4 gigs of GPU memory. You can see everything over here. This is ice cold on the back. This is actually very cool. The fan is running, and this is with the default fan curve, so you can feel the air kind of blowing through there, but it's no louder than any other handheld I've ever used. Maybe you can hear that if I put it right up on the mic. Definitely has that new vent smell. You know what I'm talking about. So I think what I'm going to do is just make a couple of modifications here. So first and foremost, let's just step down to 720. So there's a couple of super sampling. There's your super resolution 2.1. Super resolution 3, XE super sampling, that's the Intel super sampling 1.3. So let's try FSR 3, it looks like. There we go. We'll run one more benchmark and let's see how this performs. Okay, so there we go. 58 frames per second, 53. It's definitely got a boost there. Now, I didn't change any of the texture settings or any of the other settings there, and that's where you're going to want to play around just a little bit. But we're hitting 59 right now, 64, 72. So we're getting there. I dropped it from 1080 to 720 using the upscaler to go back to 1080 with FSR 3. So we are getting an improvement, and I did not change anything else. None of the texture settings, particles, none of that stuff. But again, I've used a lot of these handhelds, and I know that you're gonna wanna play around a lot with the settings. And you want to find that right setting for you, and once you kind of get that set, you're really good to go. I mean, 62.99 average frames per second, minimum 51.28. So those minimums are still a little bit lower than what I would like. I like seeing that the average is 62, almost 63, but I want that minimum to be 60 plus. So in the settings, I'm definitely going to go in and I'm going to change probably some of the textures. I'm probably going to change maybe some of the particles over here. I see that motion blur's on. Definitely going to turn that off. Depth of field, lens flare. I don't like any of those things, to be perfectly honest. So I turned down some of the settings to medium here. I want to try one more. But while we're running this in the background, all of this is to say that this is a pretty solid handheld entry, and this is brand new, so there's going to be some updates, there's going to be some performance improvements to expect with drivers and things of that nature. But it seems like everything is in a really concise package here. And all in all, this is really nice, especially once you get a really nice screen like this AMOLED screen, and you build a whole system around it. This is a great mobile device. And there we go. Now we're hitting the 60, 62, 65. That's what I like to see. And again, you can use this to stream over your network from your PC. So if you have a high-end PC that can handle all of these games, and if you have a pretty decent network, you can just play remote, through Steam, and you can just run it off of your hardware there. Same thing that you can do with the PlayStation, and they're portable currently, and you can just run it over here. And input lag isn't that bad. Really kind of depends on your setup. It really kind of depends on all of those factors. Bit rate's not too bad either. I have noticed that if your network's not that great, you'll get some really bad kind of compression and bitrate drops if there's a scene with a lot of action and particles. But with that being said, that's always a nice option to have, so you don't have to run things natively, and you do get that battery power. Now with Game Pass, you get access to all of Windows games through Game Pass, and you can run all of that natively on this device as well. And by customizing some of the settings here and tweaking them, I was able to get an average of 70.16 and a minimum of 57.18. That's a lot closer to that minimum of 60 that I was looking for. You're still going to want to play with the settings just a little bit just to get it to that sweet spot. For instance, with my Steam Deck for Jedi Fallen Order, that took me a little bit to find the right settings to get just right. And once I got those settings, I played the game start to finish. Actually, I'm thinking about playing it again because I had a lot of fun with that one. I did get Jedi Survivor, but I really like Fallen Order a lot. I'll get into Survivor later. But all of that is to say that When it comes to these devices, there is a tweaking component, but if you're a PC gaming enthusiast, that's nothing that you're a stranger to. That's actually kind of part of the deal. 70.16, not bad. So now that we've tried a benchmark in kind of a synthetic measure of what performance would look like, let's just do a dry run. Let's hop into the world and let's just see how it looks. So one quick thing, I play inverted. I'm one of those guys. Sorry. There we go. Ooh. Okay. The vibration on this actually feels pretty good. The rumble, that's actually kind of nice. Yeah, all in all, this feels pretty good. And the other thing to take into consideration is that when you drop your graphics settings and you're playing on a 23-inch or 27-inch monitor, you notice it, right? On that big picture, you can kind of notice that fidelity loss. But on a smaller screen like this, especially at this distance, you actually don't notice it as much unless you're really, really looking for it. The way I'm playing it right now, I mean, this looks pretty good. And I have to say, this screen actually looks fantastic. Look at that exposure difference. You have that bright area over there, but then you have this dark area down here. And this looks so clean. And there's no glow here either. You know, with LCD panels, you get that glow that happens in dark scenes, but AMOLED don't have that issue at all. And I've got to say, this feels really good. Now, you'll notice I don't have an FPS counter on for this one. And I'm going to give you a little life advice when it comes to gaming handhelds. Just turn the counter off and just have some fun playing. Because with my handheld at home, I found myself sinking a lot of time into tweaking the settings, and I was tweaking settings more than I was actually playing games. Once I kind of forced myself to turn that FPS counter off, I was enjoying it way more. So just a little pro tip. I mean, obviously, if you're getting really bad frame dips or any freezing or glitching, then yeah, do a little troubleshooting and tweak your settings. But overall, for a quality of life thing, just turn that counter off. You'll feel a lot better about yourself. And that's not to say anything negative about handhelds in general. I think it's just to say that there's a wide variety of PC games out there, and they all demand very different things. Some games are better with really great CPUs. You know, this has an 8-core, 16-thread CPU, and some games may take advantage of that really well. Some games, obviously like CyberPunk, very GPU intensive. So that means it's really gonna rely a lot on a hefty GPU, and scaling that down for something like this, yeah, you're gonna lose some image fidelity. But all in all, I mean, this feels fantastic. And I gotta say, the hair triggers, I like this a lot. I actually really like this feature a lot. I mean, when I change it back down to the full press, no, I actually like the hair trigger. I'm not gonna lie. I actually like that. That feels pretty good. Hall effect feels good. So, oh, okay, radial dial is my mouse scroll. That's actually kind of handy. Does this one do anything? I don't think I have this set to anything, but yep, there we go. Okay, so I can just swap between weapons pretty easily. Oh, look at that. It's a nice, beautiful scene looking at Night City. And I think that's where we leave off with the Zotax Zone. I mean, all in all, this is a pretty awesome device, and there's so many to choose from, but I think this is one really good option that you can get at your local microcenter. And remember, if you don't have a microcenter near you, to comment #I want a microcenter near me.